The maid had been working for the Billionaire family for many years. She knew the children very well, more than most people who worked in the house. The twins were full of energy, clever and very curious, but they were always under strict rules. Their parents were busy, often traveling or working, and their schedules were always planned down to the last minute. The boys had tutors, music lessons, sports lessons, and other activities, but very little time to just play or explore. The maid understood that they needed more than just lessons and rules. They needed moments of freedom, where they could laugh, explore, and feel like children first before they were expected to be heirs to a wealthy family. One morning, while preparing breakfast, she noticed that the twins were restless. They had already eaten and finished some reading, but they were pacing around the living room talking to each other in low voices. She could see that they wanted to do something different, so she decided to speak to them in her calm, gentle voice. She asked if they wanted to go out for a little while. The twins looked at each other in surprise. They were not used to spontaneous plans, especially ones that did not involve a teacher or their parents. But she smiled warmly and told them it would be safe and fun, and that she would take care of everything. She suggested going to the mall. It was not far, and there were places where the boys could see new things, maybe even try something they had never done before. The twins hesitated at first. They had never been allowed to go to the mall without a parent or a group of teachers. The thought of stepping out of the house on their own made them nervous but also excited. One of them finally asked if it would really be okay, and she reassured them that it would be perfectly fine. She promised they would be back before lunch, and that she would keep an eye on them the entire time. Slowly, their curiosity outweighed their hesitation, and they agreed. The preparation for the trip was simple. She helped the boys put on casual clothes that were comfortable for walking and exploring. They put on sneakers, zipped up their jackets, and held small backpacks with snacks and water. Even in their casual clothes, they looked like children from a wealthy family. But today they were going to experience something different. The maid reminded them to stay close to her and to enjoy the day. She knew that the mall could be overwhelming with people, stores, and loud noises, but she wanted the boys to feel the excitement of it all. She also thought it might teach them how to handle new environments with confidence and curiosity. As they stepped outside, the fresh morning air greeted them. The streets were not empty, but they were manageable. The maid held the twins' hands for safety, and they walked carefully toward the car. The ride to the mall was quiet at first, with the boys looking out of the window at the passing streets. The city felt different from the calmness of their home. There were sounds of cars, people talking, and music playing from street performers. The twins were wide-eyed, absorbing everything. The maid smiled, noticing how their faces lit up with every new thing they saw. She talked to them softly about the shops, the buildings, and the people, trying to make them feel comfortable. It was not just a trip to the mall. It was a chance for the boys to see the world beyond the walls of their home. When they arrived at the mall, the twins' excitement grew. They had been to malls before with their parents, but those visits were often rushed. Today, they could move at their own pace. The maid guided them slowly, letting them take in the sights. There were colorful displays, lights reflecting off shiny surfaces, and music playing softly from speakers above. The twins looked around, fascinated by everything from the shop windows to the people walking past. The maid encouraged them to explore, but she kept a careful watch, ready to step in if needed. She wanted them to feel free but safe at the same time. As they walked, the twins found small things that caught their attention. A toy store had an elaborate display with moving figures, and they stopped to watch the mechanical animals move in a circle. The maid knelt down with them, explaining the movements and letting them touch some of the softer toys. The twins laughed, the sound pure and genuine. It was the kind of laughter that the maid had not heard often in their strict daily routines. She realized how important this moment was for them. They were enjoying something as simple as toys in a store, something ordinary to most children, but extraordinary to them. Next, they wandered into a section of the mall where music instruments were displayed. A shiny piano in the center of the store caught their eyes immediately. It was not just any piano. It was polished, gleaming, and looked like it belonged on a stage. The twins moved closer, curious and drawn to the black and white keys. The maid watched quietly, sensing that something special might happen. She encouraged them to touch it, press the keys, and feel the sounds. The twins looked at each other unsure, but the maid reassured them. She told them it was okay to make mistakes and to just enjoy the music. One of the twins slowly pressed a key, and the soft note filled the small space around the piano. The other twin followed, and together they experimented with different notes. The maid smiled warmly, feeling a quiet sense of pride. This was more than just playing. It was a moment of discovery. The twins were realizing their own abilities, their creativity, and their confidence. She stayed back, letting them lead the moment, knowing that sometimes the best lessons came from experience rather than instructions. As more notes were played, the boys' confidence grew. Their fingers moved more freely, and they began creating simple tunes. The maid noticed that people passing by started to slow down, watching the scene. The twins were oblivious to the attention. They were completely absorbed in the music. The maid felt a mixture of pride and humility. She had only suggested the outing, but the experience was turning into something magical. It was a reminder that children, no matter their background, needed moments of freedom and self-expression. Time passed quickly. The twins were so engaged that they hardly noticed the shoppers around them. The maid gently reminded them to take breaks and drink water, but she allowed them to continue playing. She knew that these moments were rare and precious. The simple act of touching the piano keys had opened a world of possibility for the boys. She could see in their eyes that they were discovering not just music, but confidence, curiosity, and the joy of doing something purely for themselves. Finally, as the morning turned into late morning, the maid suggested they move on and explore other parts of the mall. The twins reluctantly stepped away from the piano, promising each other that they would return to it. The maid guided them through the mall, stopping at small shops and letting them pick tiny souvenirs for themselves. She explained things quietly, helping them learn about everyday experiences, from choosing a snack to understanding how stores worked. Each step of the way, the twins were learning and growing, not through lessons or lectures, but through experience and gentle guidance. By the time they returned to the car, the twins were laughing, talking, and full of energy. They shared their thoughts about the piano and the toys, their eyes sparkling with excitement. The maid felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had given them something far more valuable than any material item, a day where they felt free, happy, and in control of their own choices. The trip to the mall, which had started as a simple suggestion, had turned into an unforgettable adventure that the boys would remember for years. As they drove back home, the twins continued to talk about the piano, the sounds, and how much fun they had. The maid smiled quietly, knowing that she had done something important. She had not only cared for the children's safety and happiness, but had also opened a door to a new world of possibilities. This was only the beginning of the day, and she sensed that more surprises and magical moments were waiting just around the corner. As the twins walked through the mall with the maid, their excitement continued to grow. Every corner held something new, and the energy of the place made them feel alive. The bright lights, the sound of footsteps, and the hum of conversations created a world very different from their quiet home. The maid moved slowly, letting them explore but keeping a careful watch. She knew this environment could be overwhelming, but she also wanted them to enjoy it fully. She encouraged them to look at things, touch small items, and ask questions about what they saw. She believed that curiosity was one of the most important qualities a child could have, and she wanted to nurture it. While walking, the twins noticed a display of musical instruments in one of the stores. A shiny piano caught their eyes immediately. It stood tall and elegant in the middle of the store, gleaming under the bright mall lights. The keys looked inviting, and they could not resist moving closer. The maid smiled gently, encouraging them to try it out. She told them there was no pressure, no expectation to perform perfectly. The piano was just for fun, and it was a chance to discover something new. The twins were hesitant at first, unsure of what to do, but their curiosity soon overcame their hesitation. One of the twins pressed a key softly, producing a gentle note. The sound was different from anything they had ever played before. It echoed slightly in the open space of the store, drawing the attention of a few shoppers nearby. Encouraged by this, the other twin joined in, pressing another key. Together they began exploring the piano, pressing notes in different orders, trying to create sounds that pleased them. The maid watched quietly, letting them take the lead. She knew that the best experiences often came from self-discovery rather than guidance. Her role was to support and protect them, not to control them. As the twins played, The notes slowly formed into something resembling a simple tune. The maid could see the joy and pride on their faces. This was a new experience for them, playing in a public place, making music without anyone instructing them. Shoppers started to notice and gathered nearby, curious about the children who were so focused and absorbed. Some pulled out their phones to record while others just watched silently, smiling at the unexpected performance. The twins, however, were completely immersed in their music and did not notice the attention they were drawing. Encouraged by the sounds they were creating, the twins began experimenting more boldly. They pressed keys faster, tried harmonies, and even attempted to play with one hand while the other hand pressed random notes. The maid stood a few steps back, observing, proud of how confidently they were exploring. She could see their personalities reflected in the way they played. One twin was methodical, pressing keys in a pattern, while the other was more experimental, trying different combinations. Together they balanced each other, creating a harmony neither of them had expected. This moment was more than just music. It was a chance for them to express themselves freely. As the twins continued, more people gathered around. Shoppers who had been walking past stopped to watch, intrigued by the scene. A few children in the crowd looked on with admiration, inspired by how the twins were so fearless and confident. The maid noticed the growing audience and felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. She was proud that the twins were discovering their talents and enjoying themselves, but she also wanted to ensure that they were not overwhelmed. She whispered softly to them, reminding them to breathe and take breaks if needed. The twins nodded, but they were so engaged that they barely needed reminders. The piano store staff noticed the small crowd and smiled. They had seen many people come and go, but the energy from the twins was different. It was contagious, drawing smiles and quiet admiration. One of the staff members approached cautiously, watching the twins' hands move gracefully over the keys. They were not professionals, but there was a natural rhythm and intuition in the way they played. The maid watched the staff's reaction silently, feeling proud and a little amazed herself. She had known the twins were talented, but seeing them play so naturally in public was extraordinary. The twins themselves were unaware of the growing admiration. They were focused entirely on the piano, experimenting with rhythms, tones, and melodies. They encouraged each other, pointing out notes that sounded nice and repeating sequences they liked. Laughter and shouts of excitement filled the small space, blending with the music. The maid stayed close, gently guiding them when necessary, but mostly letting them lead. She knew that experiences like this helped children build confidence, creativity, and joy in unexpected ways. At one point, one twin tried a simple melody he had heard in one of his music lessons. The other twin quickly followed, adding harmony in a way that was surprisingly skilled for their age. Shoppers stopped in their tracks, amazed at the sound. Some whispered to each other, trying to understand how children so young could play with such ease and confidence. The maid's heart swelled with pride. She had only suggested the outing to let the twins enjoy themselves, but it had turned into something much bigger. The twins were not only having fun, but also inspiring everyone around them. As time passed, the twins' skills improved with each attempt. They became more confident and expressive. Their fingers moved faster, more fluidly, and they began to understand the piano in a way that seemed instinctive. The maid noticed that people around were reacting positively, clapping quietly and smiling. A few strangers even offered encouraging words. The twins paused briefly, acknowledging the audience with shy smiles, then continued playing. They were learning how to share their talent without fear, guided by the gentle presence of the maid. Eventually, the music attracted more attention. A small crowd formed around the piano, and the twins began to enjoy the performance aspect, feeling proud that people were watching. The maid realized that this simple trip to the mall had become an unplanned event, a moment where the twins were not only playing music, but also connecting with others through their performance. She stayed close, ensuring that they were comfortable and safe, and quietly marveled at how natural they were in the moment. The store manager, who had been observing from a distance, approached the maid cautiously. He praised the twins for their skill and confidence, remarking on how unusual it was to see children play so naturally in public. The maid thanked him, explaining that this was a spontaneous moment, not a planned performance. The manager smiled and said that the twins had a gift, and it was clear to everyone watching. The maid felt a deep sense of pride, but kept the focus on letting the twins enjoy themselves. She did not want to pressure them. This was about discovery, not expectation. As the morning continued, the twins experimented with more complex tunes. They tried to replicate songs they had heard on the radio or in their music lessons. Sometimes they made mistakes, hitting wrong keys or losing rhythm, but the maid encouraged them to keep trying. She reminded them that mistakes were part of learning and that the joy of music came from expression, not perfection. The twins smiled, nodded, and continued playing, their confidence growing with each note. By mid-morning, the twins were fully immersed in their musical exploration. The mall around them seemed to fade away as they focused entirely on the piano. Shoppers, staff, and other children continued to watch, captivated by the twins' natural talent. The maid felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had taken them out for a simple outing, hoping to give them a break from their structured routines. But what had happened was far more meaningful. The twins were discovering themselves through music, and the experience was already leaving a lasting impression on their hearts. As the twins finished their session, the maid gently guided them to step away from the piano. They were reluctant, wanting to continue, but she reminded them that there were still many other things to explore in the mall. The twins agreed, promising each other that they would return to the piano later. The maid smiled, knowing that this first encounter had sparked a curiosity and love for music that might last a lifetime. They moved on to explore other parts of the mall, carrying with them the excitement and confidence that the piano had given them. After their first playful session on the piano, the twins felt more confident. Their curiosity had turned into excitement, and they could not stop thinking about the music. The maid noticed how their faces lit up whenever they talked about the notes they played, or the tunes they tried to remember from their lessons. As they walked through the mall, she let them take the lead, pointing out shops or small attractions that caught their interest. She encouraged them to explore, knowing that experiences like this built confidence and understanding of the world around them. They wandered into a section of the mall filled with books and small learning toys. The twins picked up a few musical books, flipping through pages filled with illustrations of pianos, instruments, and notes. The maid watched patiently, helping them read a few words when they asked. Their curiosity was insatiable. They wanted to learn more about music even though it was just for fun at this point. The maid smiled, knowing that this exploration was teaching them more than just the notes on a page. It was teaching them to ask questions, to wonder, and to discover things for themselves. After a while, the twins felt a strong pull back toward the piano store. They had enjoyed playing before and wanted to return. The maid agreed, letting them lead the way. As they approached, she noticed a few people already gathered near the piano, some of whom had been watching earlier. The twins felt a little nervous at first, realizing there were more eyes on them now. The maid held their hands briefly and whispered gentle encouragement. She told them that it did not matter what anyone thought, and that they should play for themselves, not for the crowd. This small talk helped the twins regain their confidence, and they stepped forward toward the piano. One twin started with a familiar tune, something simple he had learned during his lessons. The other twin followed, adding harmony naturally, just like they had done before. This time, they felt more comfortable with the attention, and their movements were smoother. The notes filled the area with a gentle melody, capturing the interest of everyone nearby. The maid stood back quietly proud, knowing that the boys were expressing themselves freely and confidently. She had given them the opportunity to explore, and now they were creating something beautiful on their own. As the twins played, people began to gather slowly. Some shoppers paused, curious to hear the music. A few children watched with wide eyes, clearly inspired by the skill and confidence of the twins. Even the store employees were impressed. They had seen many people play the piano, but the twins were different. There was a natural rhythm and understanding in their playing that was rare for such young children. The maid noticed how the boys interacted, encouraging each other, pointing out sequences they liked and laughing when they tried new combinations of notes. It was not just music. It was a display of teamwork and creativity. With each tune they played, the twins grew more confident. They experimented with faster tempos and more complex sequences, pushing themselves to try new things. The maid watched carefully, stepping in only when necessary to keep them safe or calm. She knew that these moments were building more than musical skills. They were teaching the twins how to handle new experiences, interact with others, and express themselves without fear. The mall, once overwhelming, had become a stage where the boys could shine. The twins' enthusiasm began to draw more attention. Shoppers who had been walking past started stopping, curious about the young performers. Some quietly clapped, while others pulled out their phones to capture the moment. The twins remained focused on the piano, unaware of the growing audience. They encouraged each other with smiles and gentle nudges, creating a bond that strengthened as they played. The maid felt a deep sense of pride, knowing that she had helped create this environment where the boys could thrive and be themselves. One of the twins suddenly remembered a tune he had heard on the radio. He attempted to replicate it, pressing keys carefully, while the other twin followed with matching harmony. The melody sounded surprisingly accurate, capturing the attention of everyone around. People whispered to each other, amazed at the talent and confidence of the children. The maid watched, silently cheering for them. She knew that this was more than just playing music. It was a moment of discovery, where the twins realized their own abilities and potential. As the morning continued, the twins grew bolder. They started experimenting with their own tunes, creating new combinations of notes and rhythms. Laughter and excitement filled the space as they discovered how certain notes sounded together. The maid encouraged them, reminding them that there were no mistakes in music, only new opportunities to learn. This reassurance helped the twins explore even further, and they began to create melodies that were both unique and harmonious. The audience watched in awe, captivated by the spontaneous performance. The store staff began to take notice. One employee quietly observed the twins' hands as they moved across the keys. It was clear that these children had an instinctive understanding of rhythm and melody. The maid, sensing the admiration from the staff, felt a quiet pride. She had always known that the twins were special, but seeing them perform in public with such confidence was extraordinary. She remained close, ready to guide them if needed, but mostly letting them shine. As the twins continued playing, a few children from the crowd approached timidly, watching and listening. The twins smiled at them, nodding encouragement. The maid noticed the interaction and felt a sense of fulfillment. This simple outing had become more than just fun for the twins. It was inspiring others as well. The mall had become a place of discovery, creativity, and connection. The twins were learning not only about music but also about how their actions and talents could impact those around them. At one point, one twin attempted a slightly more complicated piece he had learned in a lesson. The other twin followed, adding his own interpretation. The music flowed naturally and the sound was beautiful. Shoppers stopped to listen, some clapping softly, others whispering their amazement. The maid watched with a mix of pride and humility. She had suggested this outing simply to give the twins a break from routine, but it had turned into a moment of magic. The boys were expressing themselves freely, and the joy was evident in their faces. As the session continued, the twins grew more confident in their abilities. They experimented with volume, tempo, and rhythm, learning through trial and error. The maid encouraged them to notice how the music made them feel and how it affected the audience. This reflection helped the twins understand the power of their actions and the joy of sharing their talents. The mall, once a place of shopping and noise, had become a space of creativity, learning, and connection. Eventually, the twins paused to catch their breath. They were exhilarated, laughing and talking about what they had just played. The maid praised them gently, acknowledging their effort and creativity. She reminded them that the experience was just as important as the music itself. The twins nodded, understanding that they had learned something valuable about themselves and the world. The mall had offered them a chance to explore, perform, and connect, all under the watchful and caring eyes of the maid. As they stepped away from the piano, the twins promised each other they would return to play again. They were excited about the new ideas and tunes they wanted to try. The maid smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She had guided them to discover not only music but also confidence, creativity, and joy. This experience would remain with them for a long time, shaping how they viewed the world and their own potential. The day, which had begun as a simple outing, had transformed into an unforgettable journey of discovery and growth. The twins, having finished their first extended session at the piano, felt exhilarated and inspired. Their fingers tingled from the practice, but their hearts were full. They looked around the store and saw the small crowd that had gathered during their playing. Faces of strangers, adults, and children alike displayed expressions of amazement and joy. Some clapped quietly, others smiled encouragingly, and a few whispered comments about how talented the twins were. The maid stood close by, feeling proud but also careful to keep them grounded. She reminded them softly that the joy of playing music was what mattered most, not the attention they received. The twins were shy for a brief moment when they noticed the crowd, but soon, their curiosity and excitement overtook any nervousness. They began playing again, experimenting with new melodies. One twin played slowly with deliberate notes while the other added bursts of faster rhythms. Together, they created a spontaneous harmony that was both playful and beautiful. The people watching seemed captivated by the unexpected performance, and the maid quietly observed, feeling a sense of accomplishment. She had guided them to this moment, giving them a safe space to express themselves, and it was working beautifully. As the music continued, more shoppers began to stop and listen. Children gathered near the front, pointing and whispering to each other about the twins' talent. Some adults took out their phones to record the performance, while others just stood in awe. The twins were fully immersed in the music, laughing softly when they hit funny notes and cheering each other on when a melody sounded just right. The maid smiled, noticing the genuine joy on their faces. She had seen them smile before, but this was different. It was the kind of smile that comes from doing something freely, without pressure, and discovering a talent within yourself. The store employees, who had initially watched quietly from a distance, now came closer to observe. One of them, a young man with a gentle demeanor, was particularly impressed. He leaned over to the maid and whispered that he had never seen children play with such natural rhythm and coordination. The maid thanked him quietly, explaining that this was a spontaneous moment, not a formal lesson or performance. The employee nodded in understanding, clearly moved by the authenticity of the experience. Encouraged by the growing crowd, the twins tried to recreate a piece they had learned during a music lesson. One twin started with the melody, carefully pressing each key while the other added harmony and rhythm. The sound was surprisingly accurate, and the twins began to feel a sense of pride. The maid quietly reminded them to enjoy the moment and not worry about perfection. Her gentle encouragement helped the twins focus on the joy of playing, rather than the pressure of the audience. The music flowed naturally, and soon the shoppers around them were fully engaged, clapping along to the rhythm and smiling at the young performers. As the performance continued, the twins became bolder. They started experimenting with different combinations of notes, exploring new rhythms and creating unique melodies. Their laughter and excitement filled the space, making the music feel lively and spontaneous. The maid observed silently, stepping in only when necessary to keep them safe. She could see how the experience was building not only their musical skills, but also their confidence and sense of self. The twins were learning to trust themselves, to express their creativity, and to enjoy the reactions of others without fear or hesitation. The crowd grew larger, and some of the onlookers began whispering to each other. They were amazed that two children could play so naturally and confidently, especially in a public place. Some commented on how rare it was to see talent so young, while others simply smiled, enjoying the unexpected delight of the moment. The twins, however, remained focused on the piano. They were not playing for the crowd. They were playing for themselves and each other. The maid's presence provided a quiet sense of security, allowing them to explore freely and without worry. At one point, one twin tried to replicate a complex tune he had heard from a recording at home. The other twin followed, adding improvisation and harmony. The music sounded beautiful, and the twins felt a surge of excitement and accomplishment. They laughed when a note sounded unexpected but quickly adapted, turning mistakes into new melodies. The maid's gentle guidance helped them maintain balance, encouraging creativity while ensuring they felt supported. The audience, captivated by the performance, watched silently, mesmerized by the spontaneity and skill of the young performers. As the morning continued, the twins experimented with volume and tempo, learning how to create different moods with the piano. They discovered how a soft note could sound delicate and calming, while a series of fast notes could be exciting and energetic. The maid encouraged them to notice the effects of their music on themselves and the audience. The twins began to understand the power of music to convey emotion and connect with others. The experience was teaching them more than just how to play. It was teaching them about expression, creativity, and communication. The store staff, now fully engaged, quietly cheered the twins on. One employee commented that the twins had an instinctive understanding of music, a natural talent that went beyond lessons or practice. The maid smiled quietly, acknowledging the observation but keeping the focus on the experience itself. She wanted the twins to feel free, to play without expectation and to discover the joy of creating music. She understood that this moment was more valuable than any praise or recognition. It was a genuine exploration of talent and self-expression. The twins continued to play, sometimes in unison, sometimes experimenting individually. Their interactions were full of laughter, encouragement, and creativity. They learned to listen to each other, to respond to the melodies, and to create harmony together. The maid observed silently, feeling proud of their growth. She knew that this experience was shaping not only their musical abilities, but also their relationship, teaching them teamwork, patience, and mutual support. As the crowd around them grew, a few children shyly approached, watching the twins play. The twins smiled and nodded encouragement, sharing their excitement and joy. The maid noticed this interaction and felt a sense of fulfillment. The day, which had begun as a simple outing, had become a shared experience of creativity and connection. The twins were inspiring others through their music, spreading joy and curiosity. The mall, once a place of shopping and noise, had transformed into a space of exploration, learning, and community. Eventually, the twins paused to catch their breath. Their faces were flushed with excitement and their hands tingled from the constant movement. The maid praised them gently, acknowledging their effort and creativity. She reminded them that the joy of playing was what mattered most, and that they had done something remarkable by sharing their talent and enthusiasm with others. The twins nodded, feeling proud and satisfied. They had discovered a new level of confidence and enjoyment, and the experience had strengthened their bond with each other and with the maid. As they stepped away from the piano, the twins promised each other they would return to play again. They were already excited about new melodies they wanted to try and rhythms they wanted to explore. The maid smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and pride. She had guided them to discover not only music but also confidence, creativity, and joy. The day, which had started as a simple outing, had transformed into an unforgettable journey of self-discovery, connection, and inspiration. The twins had learned that music was not just about playing notes, but about expressing themselves, sharing with others, and finding joy in every sound they created. The twins, now fully comfortable with the piano and the crowd around them, began to feel a new sense of confidence. The first few minutes of hesitation were gone, replaced by excitement and curiosity. The maid stood nearby, her eyes calm and attentive, making sure they felt safe and supported. She had watched them grow with every note, every melody, and every laugh. Today had become far more than just a trip to the mall. It had turned into a moment of discovery and expression, and she could see how much the twins were enjoying it. As the twins experimented with different melodies, a man in his 40s with a kind but curious demeanor approached the maid and the twins. He introduced himself quietly, explaining that he was a local pianist who often gave private lessons and organized small performances. He had been drawn by the music and was amazed at the twins' natural ability. The maid listened politely, unsure of what to expect, but she did not discourage the conversation. The twins, curious themselves, looked up at the man with wide eyes, eager to hear what he had to say. The pianist smiled and praised the twins for their talent. He explained that many children take years to reach the level of coordination and understanding that they already displayed. He mentioned that their ability to play with both harmony and creativity was rare, and encouraged them to consider performing more if they were interested. The maid felt a mixture of pride and caution. She wanted to protect the twins from pressure or expectations, but she also recognized that this was a unique opportunity for them to experience something extraordinary. She quietly told the pianist that the twins were just playing for fun today, but his encouragement had clearly sparked a new sense of possibility. One of the twins hesitated at first, unsure if they should respond. But the other, filled with curiosity, nodded and asked questions about what it meant to perform in front of others. The pianist explained that performing was about sharing music and connecting with people, not just showing skill. He offered to invite them to a small charity event he was organizing, where children could play and share their talent with an audience in a relaxed environment. The twins' eyes lit up with excitement. They whispered to each other, smiling and laughing at the idea. The maid, noticing their enthusiasm, encouraged them gently, reminding them that this was optional and that their enjoyment was most important. The twins quickly agreed that they wanted to participate. They were excited by the idea of performing in a safe and supportive environment, where they could continue to explore music and creativity. The pianist offered to help them prepare, giving simple tips and guidance. He assured them that the goal was to have fun and enjoy the experience, not to worry about mistakes or perfection. The maid felt a sense of relief. She knew that this approach would allow the twins to build confidence and enjoy music without fear or pressure. As they continued to play, the pianist guided the twins through a few simple exercises. He showed them how to add small flourishes to their melodies, how to balance rhythm, and how to listen to each other while playing. The twins were quick learners, and their natural coordination made it easy for them to follow his instructions. The maid watched with pride, noticing how engaged and focused they were. She knew that these small lessons were giving the twins a deeper understanding of music and performance, while also keeping the experience fun and lighthearted. The audience around them grew slightly larger as shoppers continued to notice the twins' talent. Some clapped gently in encouragement while others whispered admiration. The twins were aware of the attention but remained focused on their music. The maid stood nearby, providing a quiet sense of security, allowing them to explore without fear. She had learned that the best way to help children grow was to offer support without interference, letting them lead their own experiences. Today was proving to be a perfect example of that approach. The pianist suggested a simple duet, asking the twins to coordinate their playing in a way that created harmony. At first, they were hesitant, unsure if they could follow the instructions, but with gentle encouragement from the maid and guidance from the pianist, they began. One twin played the melody, while the other added complementary notes. Slowly, the music began to flow naturally, and the twins smiled at each other, realizing they could create something beautiful together. The audience watched in awe, impressed by the coordination and musicality of such young performers. The twins' confidence grew with each tune they played. They experimented with dynamics, trying soft passages and loud bursts, learning how to convey emotion through music. The pianist praised their efforts, highlighting how expressive and creative they were. The maid encouraged them as well, reminding them to enjoy the process and to play from the heart. The twins responded eagerly, laughing and experimenting with new combinations of notes, each discovery bringing a sense of accomplishment and joy. The pianist then shared stories of children he had worked with, emphasizing that talent was valuable, but enjoyment and expression were more important. He explained that music could bring people together, inspire others, and create unforgettable memories. The twins listened attentively, absorbing the lessons without feeling pressured. The maid smiled, realizing that this experience was teaching them more than just music. It was teaching them about confidence, communication, and the joy of sharing talents with others. As the morning turned into late morning, the twins had played for a while, and the mall had grown busier. Shoppers moved around, but many stayed near the piano, drawn by the beautiful sounds and the joyful energy of the twins. Some parents whispered to their children, encouraging them to listen and learn from the performance. The maid observed quietly, noting the positive impact her simple suggestion of a mall trip had created. The twins had not only explored music, but had also inspired those around them. Eventually, the pianist invited the twins to take a short break. He offered them water and snacks, explaining that even musicians needed to rest. The twins sat down, chatting excitedly about what they had learned and what they wanted to try next. The maid smiled as she listened, feeling a deep sense of pride and satisfaction. She had facilitated an experience that allowed the twins to grow, explore, and enjoy themselves in a way that was meaningful and memorable. During the break, the pianist discussed the charity event in more detail. He explained the audience, the setting, and the idea of performing in a relaxed environment. The twins were eager, asking questions about the event and how they could prepare. The maid answered patiently, reassuring them that it was about enjoyment and expression, not perfection. The twins nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and anticipation. They were beginning to understand that their talent could bring joy to others and that sharing it was a rewarding experience. After the break, the twins returned to the piano for a final session before leaving the mall. They played with renewed energy and creativity, experimenting with rhythms, harmonies, and melodies they had learned from the pianist. The audience watched quietly, captivated by the performance. The maid observed with pride, knowing that the twins were learning, growing, and expressing themselves in a supportive environment. Each note they played was a step toward confidence, creativity, and joy. By the time they left the piano store, the twins were buzzing with excitement about the upcoming charity event. They talked about melodies, harmonies, and ideas they wanted to try. The maid smiled quietly, realizing that a simple trip to the mall had turned into an extraordinary experience of growth, learning, and inspiration. She had guided them to explore music, express themselves, and gain confidence, all while having fun. This day would remain a cherished memory for the twins, one that had opened doors to new opportunities and experiences. The applause gradually settled, leaving the room buzzing with excitement and awe. The young waitress took a deep breath, her hands still resting lightly on the piano keys. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief. What had begun as a simple challenge from a wealthy guest had become an extraordinary moment that would stay with her, and everyone present, forever. The realization that she had captivated an entire ballroom hit her slowly, washing over her in waves of emotion. She had done more than play the piano. She had shared her heart, her talent, and her courage with a room full of people who would never forget it. The millionaire, still standing nearby, smiled genuinely, no trace of teasing left in his expression. He had seen countless performances, hosted numerous events, and challenged many people, but nothing had prepared him for what he had just witnessed. He walked over and extended his hand, a gesture of respect, admiration, and recognition. She shook it, feeling the weight of the moment press lightly but firmly upon her. "Tonight you've done something remarkable," he said softly. "You've reminded all of us that talent can come from the most unexpected places, and courage can turn a single moment into something unforgettable." Guests continued to approach her, eager to express their amazement. Many were still on their feet, clapping, smiling, and whispering words of encouragement. Some asked about her musical background. Others wanted to know if she had performed publicly before. The young waitress smiled politely, answering quietly, aware that she had suddenly become the focus of attention in a way that was both thrilling and overwhelming. She realized that in a few short minutes her life had shifted from the ordinary to the extraordinary. The world that had once seemed distant and inaccessible had suddenly opened its doors, and she could feel the possibilities stretching out before her. Several guests who had initially been skeptical approached cautiously, their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. "I didn't expect that from anyone," one whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "You have something truly special. You've inspired all of us tonight." Another added, "It's rare to see someone so unassuming transform an entire room with their talent and courage. What you did was incredible." Each compliment, each acknowledgement reinforced the young waitress's sense that her decision to step forward had been the right one. She had risked fear and uncertainty, and the reward was beyond anything she could have imagined. The millionaire gathered several people nearby, speaking quietly but clearly enough for her to hear. He described her performance as a display of rare talent and exceptional courage. He praised the way she had taken a challenge and transformed it into an unforgettable experience. He spoke about opportunities that could now be available to her, professional guidance, invitations to perform at exclusive events, and introductions to people who could help her take her talent to new heights. His words filled her with hope, excitement, and a renewed sense of possibility. For the first time, she truly understood that life could change in an instant when one embraced courage and authenticity. The atmosphere in the room had shifted completely. Where there had once been polite conversation, social maneuvering, and polite applause, there was now genuine excitement, admiration, and shared amazement. People were speaking quietly to each other, describing the transformation they had witnessed. Many were still processing the idea that someone they had barely noticed moments ago had captured the attention of the entire room with skill, courage, and presence. The young waitress realized that her performance had created more than admiration. It had sparked inspiration. The room had been changed, even if just for a night, by what she had done. She looked around and saw faces glowing with emotion. Some people were whispering, some were laughing quietly in disbelief, and some were simply staring, caught in silent admiration. The young waitress understood in a deep and profound way that her courage had given others permission to believe in the unexpected, to recognize talent where they might not have thought to look, and to appreciate authenticity. For a few hours, the ordinary rules of status, expectation, and social position had been suspended, replaced by the shared experience of witnessing someone rise above fear to create something extraordinary. The young waitress's thoughts drifted briefly to her life before this night. She had spent years working quietly, unnoticed, doing her job to the best of her ability, practicing her music in private, never expecting recognition or attention. She had dreamed of opportunities like this but never dared to imagine them could be real. Tonight, she had stepped into a challenge she had initially feared, and in doing so, she had opened doors that had previously seemed closed. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. That choice had changed everything. Several influential guests approached, offering opportunities and encouragement. One suggested a private introduction to a well-known musician who could mentor her. Another offered to recommend her for performances at prestigious venues. The young waitress nodded, listening carefully, feeling the weight of possibility in each conversation. She understood that this night was not just a performance. It was a turning point. Every word spoken, every gesture of support, was a confirmation that embracing her talent and taking risks could lead to life-changing outcomes. The millionaire spoke again, drawing the attention of the room. "What we have seen tonight is more than skill," he said. "It is courage, presence, and authenticity. These are qualities that cannot be taught, cannot be bought, and cannot be predicted. This young woman has reminded all of us of the power of stepping forward, of trusting ourselves, and of embracing opportunities that seem impossible. Her performance tonight is a lesson in what happens when talent meets courage." The young waitress felt a warm flush of pride. She had never performed for such an audience, never faced such scrutiny, and never imagined that her playing could inspire so many people. She realized that this moment was more than recognition. It was validation, encouragement, and a new beginning. The applause, the admiration, and the opportunities being offered were tangible evidence that embracing courage, trusting talent, and stepping into the unknown could transform life in ways she had never dared to dream. As the gala continued around her, she began to understand the broader significance of what had happened. It was not just a single performance, it was a demonstration of human potential. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and self-doubt, yet she had moved forward and the result was transformative. The young waitress realized that courage, authenticity, and talent could create ripples far beyond the individual. Her music had touched hearts, inspired admiration, and opened doors that had seemed closed. The impact of her actions would extend far beyond this room and this night. Some guests lingered, speaking quietly to her, expressing their admiration and curiosity. Others moved on, but their faces still glowed with the memory of what they had witnessed. The young waitress felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had embraced a challenge that had seemed daunting, played with honesty and skill, and in doing so, had left an indelible mark on the people around her. She realized that success was not just about talent or recognition, but about courage, authenticity, and the willingness to step into the unknown. The millionaire approached her one final time, his expression a mix of pride and genuine amazement. "Tonight you have shown all of us something remarkable," he said. "Not everyone has the courage to step forward, to take a risk, and to embrace their talent in front of an audience that might doubt them. You have done it, and you have inspired all of us. Remember this night, because it is the beginning of something extraordinary." She nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude and determination. This was indeed the start of a new chapter, one filled with possibility, recognition, and the knowledge that she could rise to challenges beyond anything she had imagined. As the night drew to a close, the young waitress stepped away from the piano, feeling the weight of the experience settle gently around her. She had faced fear, embraced opportunity, and created something extraordinary. The applause had faded, the guests were leaving, and the ballroom was returning to quiet. But the memory of the moment would remain vivid, etched in her heart and in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. She understood that life-changing moments often arrive unexpectedly, disguised as challenges, and that courage and authenticity could transform them into experiences that would be remembered forever. Walking out of the ballroom, she felt a renewed sense of confidence and purpose. The night had been a turning point, not just in her career but in the way she saw herself and her potential. She had stepped forward when fear threatened to hold her back, had embraced a challenge and had created a moment of shared inspiration. The applause, admiration, and opportunities that followed were evidence that taking risks, trusting oneself, and embracing talent could open doors that had once seemed impossible. The young waitress knew that her life would never be the same. She had discovered the power of courage, the beauty of authenticity, and the impact of sharing one's true talent with the world. What had begun as a simple challenge had become a life-changing moment, one that would inspire her and perhaps others for years to come. She had transformed fear into triumph,